Hi everybody. Today's lecture is going to focus on the digestive system anatomy. So we will be looking at some of the models of the digestive system and some of the accessory organs of the digestive system as well. So looking at the accessory glands associated with the mouth, we have three sets of glands or three sets of salivary glands. One set that are located on the side of the face called the parotid glands that are responsible for production of the most watery saliva. We have a salivary gland that are located right underneath our tongue, referred to as the sublingual, and we have salivary glands that are located inside the mandible and called the submandibular um, glands. Within those three, again, parotid gland will produce the most watery saliva, sublingual will be produce the thickest or more mucousy saliva, and submandibular is somewhere between the two. Going down the throat, you have the thyroid cartilage, which is technically not part of the digestive system, but it is good in terms of identification of some of the anatomical structures within the neck. Going down, you have the butterfly gland, that is your thyroid gland. And if you follow the thyroid gland actually encircles the air passageway or your windpipe, which is the trachea. And if you follow the trachea further down into the thorax, you notice this kind of muscular tube right here, which is identified as your esophagus, part of your digestive path. And lateral to that, you have the largest blood vessel coming off of your heart, which is aorta. If it's not clear for you guys, do imagine that your heart will be sitting right in the middle of the thorax, right about here, and these are basically your lungs on either side. And what you see as white structure right here, that's the muscle diaphragm, which is separating the thorax from the abdominal cavity. Going farther down, again, you can kind of peek in the diaphragm right here. This is the dome-shaped muscle that is separating the thorax from the abdominal pelvic cavity. So right below the diaphragm, on the right-hand side, we have upper quadrant, we have the liver. So this whole structure is the liver, but notice that it is broken down to the larger lobe on the right-hand side, and a smaller lobe on the left-hand side, separated by a ligament referred to as the falciform ligament. Falciform ligaments partially responsible for securing the liver into the underneath the diaphragm. You can also see peeking through right here, that greenish structure right here, which is the gallbladder. In addition to the main two lobes of the liver, we have, which is the right and left lobe, you also have two additional lobes, which are the quadrate and caudate lobe, and I will show you those on the next models. Moving across, on the left-hand side, you have your stomach. And again, if you move the stomach superiorly, underneath that, you will see the pancreas tucked in. As we go farther down into the abdominal cavity, you can see in the midsection all the folds of the small intestine. Again, the only parts that will be visible in terms of a small intestine would be the jejunum, which is the superior folds, and the inferior folds are typically identified as the ileum. The first part of the small intestine is not depicted on this picture because it kind of twists back right about here and goes and introduces from the back. So from the anterior view, it will not be immediately identifiable until you move some of the organs around. Now, the small intestine ends here, connecting to the beginning of the large intestine, which starts with this pouch-like structure, which is the cecum, going up, ascending colon, across the transverse colon. On the side coming down will be your descending colon, and then you will see the twisting, which is again not depicted here, will be your sigmoid colon, which is marking the end of the large intestine in terms of absorption of the nutrients right before the indigestible material gets stored inside the rectum. So this is the posterior view of the liver. Again, the larger lobe would be your right lobe, the smaller lobe would be your left lobe, separated by the falciform ligament. You can also see the gallbladder a lot better here. The additional lobes that we discussed, you have the quadrate lobe, which is kind of identified in terms of location right next to your gallbladder, and then quadrate lobe on the other side. You also will see a large blood vessel that is passing right by the liver, and that's your inferior vena cava, which is collecting the oxygenated blood from the lower limbs, as well as the abdominal pelvic cavity. Here's another depiction of the intestines. So right here again would be the jejunum, even though it's not labeled. Right here would be your ileum. The end of the ileum connects to the beginning of the large intestine, which is the cecum. Again, ascending colon, transverse colon, coming down, descending colon. Before we move on to the next picture, let me kind of highlight a couple of points here, which is again will be visible in the following slides. So if you take a look at the cecum, which would be located in the lower right quadrant, which is basically this section, right connected to the cecum, you have this kind of a worm-like extension that comes off of it, which is part of the lymphatic system and is referred to as the appendix, a falciform appendix. On this side, if this is my descending colon, as it starts to twist to the back, it will be identified as the sigmoid colon. So let's take a look at this. So here's the posterior view of the same structure. So you have the cecum, and coming off of the cecum, you have the appendix. Here's the descending colon, and you notice how it twists into the back. That's so this twisting, this S shape that you see right here, that's the sigmoid colon, which ends with the rectum. Now in this view, what we have done is we have removed the liver, which would be sitting right here, and the stomach that would be sitting on the left-hand side, making it easier to view the pancreas, which is the tadpole structure you see right here. You also can visualize your two bean-shaped structures, which are your kidneys. And farthest on the left-hand side, you can partially visualize your spleen, which is right here. Now, in this picture, you also can visualize the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. So duodenum is relatively short. It's about 10 to 12 inches long versus the 20 feet of the other two parts of the small intestine combined together. Now, looking at the stomach, a few structures you need to know is, first of all, segmentation of the stomach. So right where the esophagus joins the stomach, that region of interest would be right below the heart. So if you kind of imagine, you will have your diaphragm right here. So the dome-shaped muscle would be right here. And right superior to the diaphragm would be your heart. So right about here would be your heart. So the area immediately underneath the heart associated with your stomach is the cardiac region, where the esophagus joins the stomach. This dome-shaped structure you see is fundus. You will also see fundus in female reproductive system. The dome-shaped structure of the uterus is also referred to as the fundus. The midsection is referred to as the body, and then the funnel ending of the stomach is called the pylorus or pyloric region. Notice again, the stomach continues to become the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. You also see, as you can see in the next picture, you can see that there are two sphincters. One is a sphincter at the beginning, and one sphincter at the beginning, and one sphincter at the end of the stomach. The first sphincter you see here is basically making sure that the acidic environment of the stomach does not move up the esophagus. This sphincter is either referred to as the lower esophageal sphincter, or because of its proximity to the heart, it can also be referred to as the cardiac sphincter. The sphincter at the end, connected to the pyloric region, is referred to as the pyloric sphincter. If you take a look at the inside of the stomach, a couple other points that I wanted to mention is you'll notice also these folds inside the intestines, inside the stomach. These are referred to as the rugae. and they're responsible for expansion of the stomach size as as more food enters the stomach. So they can expand the stomach for about 8 times its normal size when it's empty. In this picture, you're looking at a different model, but the same structure would be visible. So what we have is, like, if you can imagine, this is the superior part of the small intestine. So that would be your jejunum, and this part would be your ileum connecting to the first part of the large intestine, which is the cecum. Now, please do note the area where ileum and cecum are joining each other. There is also a valve that controls the chyme entry into the large intestine, and this region is referred to as the ileocecal valve. Again, you can visualize your appendix right here. You can also visualize the end of the large intestine, which is the rectum. The other word that may not sound new is the thin, smooth muscle pattern that you see right here. This is what referred to as the tinea coli, creating a pouch-like pattern right here you see. These are referred to as the hostra. So again, look at these little patterns created. These are hostra, and the line that creates it, which is kind of shown here also, this is called the tinea coli. Again, following the path of the large intestine, we start with the cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, which ends in the rectum, and eventually out of the body through the anus. Highlighting some of the other structure, you have the jejunum and ileum as for parts of the small intestine. Superior to that, you have the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. Right here again, your tadpole organ that you see right here is your pancreas. Now notice when you look at your large intestine, you have two fold or curve on for your large intestine. One that changes from the ascending to transverse colon, and the other one that goes from the transverse colon to the descending colon. Now this curvature right here is referred to as the hepatic flexure because it sits inferior to your liver. So your liver would be right here. So hepatic implies liver. So basically this is a curvature associated with the liver. On the opposite end, on the left-hand side, you have your spleen. So this kind of a brownish color you see right here is the organ spleen. So this curvature going from transverse to the descending colon would be the splenic flexure. Last part that I want to talk to you guys about is the duct system associated with the 3 main accessory glands inside the abdominal pelvic. These are your liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas. Now, both liver and gallbladder producing what we identify, liver produces what we identify as bile, and that bile can get stored inside the gallbladder until it is needed to be used during the process of digestion. Pancreas, your tadpole structure or organ, is responsible for production of the digestive juices and digestive enzyme that basically gets also released into the small intestine and are essential for effective chemical digestion of your food. Now, what is the path that these bile and digestive juices take to get to the small intestine? So we have 2 main lobes of your liver. So these lobes right here, they each collect and produce and release bile out of the liver. So this is your right lobe, here is your left lobe. So you will get right hepatic duct and left hepatic duct. As they come out of the liver, they merge together and they form this new duct called the common hepatic duct. The duct that is coming from the gallbladder right here is called the cystic duct. So now I have a duct from the gallbladder, cystic duct, and I have a duct from your liver called the common hepatic duct. Both of these ducts will be carrying bile toward the duodenum. So when these two ducts merge each other, which forms this long green tube you see right here, we form that tube called bile duct or common bile duct. Again, common implying that it's from two tubes, both of them carrying bile. Next structure we have, or next duct system we have, is the main duct that collects digestive juices from the pancreas. It's the white line you see right here, called the pancreatic duct. And notice how pancreatic duct and the common bile duct both merge into the first part of the small intestine, which is my duodenum. Now, the region that, the enlargement that basically where these ducts empty into the duodenum is referred to as the hepatopancreatic ampulla. There is an sphincter that controls the entry of the bile and pancreatic juices into the duodenum. And lastly, what you have on the side, you also have an accessory pancreatic duct that can support additional digestive enzymes into the duodenum. So that's about it for your digestive system. And please make sure you guys complete your assignment on Canvas and turn it in by the due date.